because you're constantly having to show up fighting. And no one wants to show up every day having to fight, right? So we've got to get to a point to where women don't have to do this, right? And for me, I now am so interested in how do I help that part though, right? Because even though I'm capable of doing it, and it wears me out too. Like there's times where I just have to just disconnect because I'm so worn out from having to have this extreme level of, strength on the outside, right? When I'm like really soft on the inside, right? But everybody always sees that tough side because that's the only way I can really be effective, right? And they're not understanding the why behind it. But I really feel like, in our workplaces and things, it has to get to a point where women don't have to do this. They don't have to, have all of their energy drained just to be there, just to be in the room.
Hello and welcome to the Bold Black Girls podcast. I'm Aries.
And I am Kim.
And I am so excited. Today we are featuring our Bold Black Girl of the Month segment, which we love to do because it just gives us a chance to amplify women's voices in our communities who are out here killing it and doing big things. And today our Bold Black Girl of the Month is LaTonya Smith. Thanks for joining us, LaTonya.
Yes, welcome.
So I met LaTonya a couple years ago. As most people know, that I've been on the board of this Women in Tech organization, and she was one of our panelists. And I remember when I met her, we talked a little bit about her role, and I was just like, okay, what is this? Like, what is that? Because I wasn't in a technical role at that time at all. So I would hear people's title and I'm like, that sounds like it's a big job, but
interesting.
You don't know exactly what they do. So Tonya, this is your opportunity to just introduce yourself and kind of what exactly you do. We know that you've gone to school for computer engineering or computer science. And so like, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, so it's all about technology for me. And I've been in technology for about 14 years now. And I really started out just as like a computer tech. And from there, I was a non-traditional student. So I was working and I was going to school. I had a grind going on. And so after, the computer tech, and then I acquired that degree, I started down this road of systems administration. And then from there, I ended up joining one of the major banks and still in the technology side of things, but it all was about infrastructure and managing these large enterprise infrastructure systems that led me to now just leading teams that are part of innovating and driving solution and development based work across the company. So still very heavy in tech. I am a techie. I am an infrastructure girl. I love everything technology. And I just continue to, innovate different solutions, work with the people that work for me in the organization, and just continue to try to drive the solutions that we need to make the bank 10 times better than what it is today.
What made you get into technology? Because I know, like, if I think back to when I was growing up, if I had seen a woman that looked like me that was doing this, I would have totally went a different way. Like I did end up I was doing tech support and things like that. But my natural inclination was I probably would have been an engineer. But now that I know what an engineer is, I didn't know anybody who was doing that. I just knew I love technology. I love computers. I love to dabble in these things, but I didn't have a visual of like, what can I be? Like, so who are your inspirations, and like, how did you decide that this is where you wanted to go?
Yeah, it's crazy because I wanted to be a pediatric doctor. That's what I wanted.
Wow.
I had no idea about this whole engineering technology world at all. And I was enrolled in college. I went regular. Of course, I ended up non-trad, but I did go right out of high school to college. And I was totally focused on being this pediatric doctor until I ended up in inorganic chemistry and was totally failing at it, right? Like, this is not it. I stayed up so late studying for a test, and I completely bummed it. When I was talking to the professor, she's like, "Oh, you could do this." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I literally worked really hard and did not get anywhere." So at that moment, I didn't really know. I didn't have a plan. I had spent all of my high school years really focused on being in healthcare. But at this moment, it was reality for me that healthcare wasn't it, because think of 4 years of chemistry, you kind of setting yourself up for failure if you can't pass the first course, right?
Wow.
So I ended up, taking a break from college a little bit to understand really what I wanted to do. So I started working, and I ran across a lady named Tina Casey. And I'll never forget her. I don't know, because she really was she was a pivotal person. Like, she really, her impact was amazing, because it really kind of has me where I am now. But she said to me, she said, have you ever thought about technology? Because I was really into like graphic design stuff. I was just doing it on the fly. I had no formal training behind it or whatever. I was just doing it. And I told her, I was like, no, not really. And she's like, but you're always like tinkering or doing something with the computer. Like, why don't you think about it? I said, I've never heard of it. Sounds too manly, really.
Oh, wow.
Sound like a thing for me. And she's like, no. So she ended up bringing me like a bunch of books, and she just would talk to me about it, because I was working in the same place as her. She was actually more tech aligned, doing tech functions, and I was just, doing like a standard like tech, like admin like role. And so she kept pouring into me, and then finally I was like, fine, I'll try it out. So I ended up getting a computer tech job, and I loved it. I was like, oh, you mean to tell me I can like do whatever? I was changing motherboards and reconfigure. I thought it was the best thing ever. I was like, you know what? Give me another one. Keep bringing them. Like, I just thought it was. So I went back to her. I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And she's like, yeah, but you can do so much more with it. And I just started to really kind of start learning a whole lot more about computer systems and how to, break them, how to fix, how to create a whole system myself. I really started doing those hands-on projects. But then she kept pouring it in, and she came back to me and said, you need to go to school. You didn't finish your degree, right? You've already started, just go finish. I'm like, yeah, she's right. I should just go finish. And I enrolled. When I first enrolled, though, it was computer science. I said, I'll just do computer science. But then I started doing all these programming classes and stuff. I'm like, this ain't it. So I started to explore a little more. And then, the advisors kept telling me, if you really like the hardware side of it, pay more attention to computer engineering as opposed to computer science, because now you're going to get more of the hardware and the computer architecture side of the degree. And so I did. I switched. I went from computer science to computer engineering so that I can do more with the hardware and be in those computer architecture classes. And from there, it went from there. So my entire career has really been around the hardware and infrastructure, because I found that is the thing that I really like most. Now, as we start to change technologies and the industry with all this software defined stuff and AI and machine learning and all that good stuff, I do got to bring that back out, right? Because it's going to be the things that allow us to move at more rapid paces from an infrastructure perspective too. But I don't know, that was it.
Isn't it funny how one class can shift your whole like visual? Because look, you were talking about computer science. I'm like, that was my first major actually, and I looked at all those math classes I was gonna have to take. I was like, I had one hard math class. I was like, oh, we moving over to something a little different here.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I actually pivoted schools just because I was like, yeah, this is not going to work for me, and I need to get done. So I pivoted to computer information systems. Mm-hmm. So I do have a question for you, Latanya. I want to kind of jump back. A lot of our listeners are not necessarily informed in terms of tech terms. So can you at a high level kind of share like what is infrastructure, and then also share like what adversities that you faced during your journey? Because I know in our tech world, even going to school, I was there was not many Black people, but definitely not many Black women. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So infrastructure is like all of your hardware type stuff. So your compute, which is a lot of what you are operating on when you do your jobs every day. But from an enterprise, it gets a little more interesting than that, because it's actually the servers that sit within those large data center environments. And then the storage, which is what all of your information is stored on, large disks. I mean, when you talk on an enterprise scale, just think much larger than what you're actually doing in your day to day, right? But yeah, it's all of the hardware that's required for any type of computing activities or to happen. That's a good high level of it.
I love it. Thank you.
Adversities, I don't know. There's so many, right? I mean, just from, being the only female in the room sometimes, and then not just being the only female, but the only Black female, right? So those things become a challenge. I think some of the biggest ones are like reintroducing and reproving yourself every time you go into a project, right? I think that one for me is one that hits me every year. It almost hits me like every quarter, right? Doesn't matter if I'm shifting a project, it happens. I'll tell you a story. I walked into a meeting one time. This meeting was with a bunch of, our vendors and things. And the whole purpose was for me to come in there and provide the direction on how we were going to move with how we were going to deploy this platform that we were getting ready to deploy out in the company. And when I walked in, it was, mind you, like my team is sitting in the room, like they're waiting on me because they're my team, right?
Right.
And they're sitting in there, and the vendors had no idea that they were my team, though, because we had done no introductions yet, none, right? It was more so them saying, hey, we're waiting, we got to wait on Latonya. So I walk in there, I sit down, and, they start talking and they start asking for, ideas and things like that. My team went, and they pinpoint the question to one of my team members, and he just so happened to be a white male, right? A little older than me as well. And he looks at him and he says, I'm sorry, I'm not the person you need to be talking to. You need to be talking to Latonya, because she's totally the one that runs this whole show. And the look on their faces was just like, wait. And for me, it's always, it hits you though. Every time It hits me, because it's like, why was the assumption though that I wasn't that, or that I couldn't have been it? So I start talking and they start questioning me. So I stopped the whole meeting. I mean, I do this a lot. I stopped the whole meeting. I said, okay, why am I here? Why am I here? Why did you ask me to be here to help make this decision if you're going to discount everything that I say, right?
Right.
Those bold statements, right? Where it's like, wait a minute, she just shut us all down. Like, and so I find myself having to do that, but I find it to be the biggest challenge, because not all the time do we want to show up having to be that, right? We don't want to have to like shut the room down before we can even get going, because then the perception of you is that, oh, she's difficult to work with, or, oh, I can't, she's not a team player. And it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with if I show up, there's one perception of me making the decisions, as opposed to if someone else that doesn't look like me, that looks like more of what you want to work with, shows up and has that exact same thought process that I'm already putting out, right?
That right there, Latonya, I mean, that I just wanted to pause there just for a second, because I heard actually another leader from one of your competitors, but he was actually speaking on kind of our behalf, in that when he walks into a room, and he's actually a Middle Eastern male, and he said it's almost like the wind is in my back pushing me forward, because you already assume before I open my mouth that I know what I'm talking about because of how I look. Just you're automatically like, oh, he's probably smart, right? Yep. And there are women and Black women that when we walk in, it's coming the other direction. We're like trying to push through that to get, just to show like, I deserve to be here, which is kind of what has caused a lot of us to have imposter syndrome. Because then you start being like, do I deserve to be here? Like, y'all got me feeling like my voice is not valid, So it is bold, I mean, for you to have to do that. But what is that? Do you get any of that kind of people kind of calling you certain names? Like, I've been called a bulldog before, or, like these certain little words that they'll use to be like, oh, she's, it could be angry Black woman or
troublemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a while on my performance reviews, it was always she is she comes off very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, I dealt with it. I battled with this because I said, okay, if I don't come like I come, then I don't get the respect that I end up getting, right?
Yeah.
If I come in soft, everybody's going to overtalk me. They're not going to hear anything that I'm saying. This ain't it. I can't, I tried it. I said, okay, fine. Since I come off too strong, let's see if that silent side of me is effective. So I go in there and I'm trying to, be, more, I guess, softer in what their depiction of it was. And it didn't work. So I was right back to the regular Tanya. I'm like, okay, this ain't it. It's not effective. And so I went back to my boss at the time, because the feedback was more of what he was hearing from everyone else. And he had always said to me, like, you'll have to figure out how you adjust or what you want to do with that. And I told him, I went back to him and I said, so this comment has showed up so many times, so many years. And it's one that's difficult for me, because when I ask anyone that's provided that feedback, so how do I solve that? How do I fix that in what you're feeling like is too strong or coming off strong? There is nothing that goes back with it. Like, this is how you can improve that, right? So it's almost like a subjective statement, right? Where it's just like, this is how I feel. This is how you make me feel. So it's almost like, how do I change how you feel? So I went to my boss and I said, what do you think? And this is what changed me to say, you know what, I have to continue to show up who I am and just keep going, right? He said, who you are, and the fact that you do have that strength and that, that toughness behind you is what's allowed you to get where you're getting. Like, it is the uniqueness of you that's allowing you to really soar in technology. So maybe there are ways, as you grow, that you'll find to adapt it and kind of, but not lose it, but just fine tune it so that the approach makes more sense to you. So you're still showing up who you need to be, because that's what's going to keep taking you further and further past these people that are intimidated really by the fact that you can't walk in a room and own it. So, at that point I said, you know what? I get it. I heard it before. I love that you all just keep giving that advice, but I'll keep asking you, what can I do? How do you feel that I can help, make you feel like I'm not coming off too strong? And if I don't have the proper feedback from it, then there's not much that I can do but continue to, show up and be bold.
I think that exactly. Wow. And that it does take the support of your leadership in order to continue to do that, because I've had it where I was not supported by my leadership in that. You just, whatever other people are saying, going off of that. And it's like, but the results are saying something different here, and it's not that. It could be just people's misperceptions, their biases, their things that they're not used to seeing someone who looks like me in these different positions, so I think it definitely is a bold move of yours to continue to show up, and please continue to show up, because we need people like you just to continue to do that, because it shows your authenticity of who you are. So definitely, for sure.
And it gets tough, right? Because I always say, like, now, because I've gotten really into this whole, like, how do we really help women really get to the where they want to be, right? I was reading an article and it was saying that, women in technology, they typically leave out before they can get to the leadership positions in technology, right? And there was a big question around, like, the why do they do that? But it's because you're constantly having to show up fighting, and no one wants to show up every day having to fight, right? So we've got to get to a point to where women don't have to do this, right? And for me, I now am so interested in how do I help that part, though, right? Because even though I'm capable of doing it, and it wears me out too. Like, there's times where I just have to just disconnect, because I'm so worn out from having to have this extreme level of, strength on the outside, right? When I'm like really soft on the inside, right? But everybody always sees that tough side, because that's the only way I can really be effective, right? And they're not understanding the why behind it. But I really feel like, you know, in our workplaces and things, it has to get to a point where women don't have to do this. They don't have to, you know, have all of their energy drained just to be there, just to be in the room. And I don't know. I'm totally after now. How do I help with that part? How do I, as a leader, start to drive and dive into that so that the women that do start to join my team or that are on my team have it a little, you know, they don't have to do that, right? Because it's 10 times harder to even be effective in your job if every time you walk in a room, you got to prepare and put your gloves on, right?
Right. And I think it's a lot, it's ignorance, you know, and I start with my sons. I got 2 boys and I'm changing the narrative from their level all the way so that when they grow up and become men, they're going to have a whole different view of what a woman is. You know, like we have these little inside jokes where it's like, you running like when they first said you running like a girl, I was like, oh, he's the fastest. He's beating everybody, you know, or, you know, somebody screamed or did something. And so now they'll be like, you over here screaming like a dude, you know, like they'll say stuff like that just to switch it up so that they can see like, hey, you think I'm a strong woman. You think I'm a strong person. You think I'm fast. You think I'm this way because I'm very athletic, you know, and things like that. So their thoughts of what a woman can and can't do is not going to be the same as somebody who's coming up in an environment where they're thinking less of us, you know.
I think that's where it
starting young.
Changes. Yeah, I agree, because just like you said, with changing the narrative, Latanya, I have a daughter who wants to go into the workforce in IT. But, you know, that bringing that strength every day, you get tired and weary. I mean, I've had the similar type of performance reviews. Is like, well, Kim is pretty strong. And I'm like, well, I have no choice but to be strong because I'm working with a difficult individual who won't let up. Mm-hmm. And so I have a question for you, like for someone like my daughter who's going to school to go into the tech industry, what advice would you give your younger self and other younger, maybe underrepresented more minorities who want to go into tech and eventually grow up to leadership?
And she's at UNT, right?
She is at UNT.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
That's my school. Like, love it. Be okay with being the only one in the room, right? Especially women, right? We have to get comfortable with being the only one in the room and just own it. Eventually it's going to change. It's going to shift. But in the 8 years that I've been in leadership, I've always been the only female leader in the room. And I even at one point, and this was not like 10, 15 years ago. I'm talking like 2 years ago. I ended up on a team. It was like 4 years ago. I always do that. Everybody tells me like my time is like totally like stopped. But 4 years ago, I ended up in a new team because I wanted promotional growth and I had gotten that. And one of my peers said to me, he had never worked with a woman who was tech savvy as I was. Usually they are typically in the administrative role. So he said to me, this is going to be different for me, but rest assured, I want to learn how to do this. So for me, it was a lot. It was a lot that hit me in the face in that moment, because like, how in the world, man, you've had a long career. How am I the first woman that you've ever, I wanted to say it, but yet there was so much wrapped into this that I'm like, wait, there's so many emotions that I can have right now. I can really just appreciate that he's come to me and been so vulnerable enough to tell me I've never done this before. It's kind of crazy that you're even here and you're as technical as you are. And so for me, it's like, if I had to go back and you know, I was, you know, having to tell you my younger self, whatever, it's like, don't let that scare you. Own it, be very proud of it, because it is a part of what's transforming our world, right? When you show up and you're that only one and you just keep showing up and you keep working at it, it might not feel like you're doing anything to change anything, but you're changing a whole lot. And there are younger individuals or people that are, you know, even older, looking at you and saying, wow, like, this is amazing. This person is here. They keep going. It gives them a means to dream too, right? So just be comfortable with that. that, whether you're in classes by yourself. I mean, in my program, there were times where I was the only female and no one wanted to work with me either, even though I felt like, listen, my mind is smarter than all of y'all. Yes. Y'all should be running to work with me, right?
Yes.
But like being in that, like just knowing like, listen, whether you guys want to support me being here or not, I'm going to be here. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the best that I can do. And I'm going to keep going. And that is the thing that if you keep reminding yourself, like this is impacting and this is a part of something bigger than me, then it'll help you get through it the more you deal with it.
Where do you get this resilience and grit from? Because I feel like, you know, I've definitely been in those rooms where they thought I wasn't going to be able to succeed, or, you know, we were all in a class together, training, you know, or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to get the best score on this test. I'm going to, you know, like everything, because I want to just prove myself. But that's my competitive nature. Like, are you into any like assessments and stuff? Because Kim and I are like obsessed with different like Enneagrams and disc and all that kind of stuff. Do you?
Yeah, I do. I love them a lot, but I don't know. I probably took every one of them. So just like
do you know what your Enneagram is? Like what number you are?
No.
What about for your discs assessment? What are you?
My disc.
Are you a D?
I am a D. I'm the one. I'm the leader times 10 over there, way over there. Yeah.
You're probably an 8 on the Enneagram. That's what I am. It's kind of like the ones that very direct, very it kind of similar to the D, like really, because I feel like the I in it is more like the 7, like what
that's
Kim
me
is 7, that DI. But yeah, I always think about that because I'm like, where do you get? As you were just talking earlier about, like, there are some women who they're not like that. They're not going to be the one that's bold and courageous and jump out there and say things, but also to continue to be like, yeah, I might be the only one, but I'm going to keep, like, it's something that creates that. Like, where would you attribute that from for your life?
I don't know. I've always, I've been in this whole mode of like, where does this come from? And the thing that I kind of lead back to all the time is like my father. So when I was 12, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And if you really think about that, that's some of the formative years of your life. This was happening. And so her having to fight through that, my father really ended up being the one doing a lot of the raising of me, right? He retired command sergeant major, real just like, hey, get it done type of guy, like really just, he kept going. Like seeing him and how he dealt with everything that was going on, we're a family of 6. I got 3 siblings and my mom dealing with that, and him just like, listen, it is what it is, we got to keep going, like you guys got to keep doing what you got to do. That seeing him and how he continued to just press forward, I think is kind of the thing that I kind of pull from, right? Just knowing or going back to those times when childhood, and I watched my dad have 3 different jobs because he's not only having to, pull, more of the financial weight because mom can't work anymore. But he's also, taking care of his kids, doing it like he was doing it. It wasn't grandma taking care of it. No, it was my father taking care of us. He did his thing. And just, I guess, seeing like, if he could do it, right? If he can get through like these different hurdles and challenges, like this is nothing, like this is light work. So I don't know. I just use it as a motivation.
Representation. He was representation
really
for you.
Yeah.
He really was. Wow.
Yeah, I always say like, man, I was well into my career before I realized like, hold up, wait, my dad raised me.
Yeah,
why I got a little bit of this that keep coming out. Right?
That's true. Yeah. Me and Kim are daddy's girls as well. Same here. I feel like him believing, and he said that to me just yesterday. He was like, if it wasn't for you being I would still have those male chauvinistic views on women, because I get on him all the time like, women aren't made to be taking care of this, and that. Like now we don't need that.
Sounds like me and my dad.
I'm like, I don't need that no more. We're not in the old days, so we are just having these kind of talks, right? And he was like, if it wasn't for you, like my brain would not even be thinking that way. He's like, but I always felt like she can be whatever she wants to be. He would send me outside to go race the boys. That's why I always was like, I could do whatever anybody else is doing. I was beating them, you know, and he was always like, my daughter can do it. When you have your father speaking those positive affirmations in your life and just believing that you can, like saying, go for it, go be a computer engineer, you can be whatever you want. That really does help kind of drive you to feel like, shoot, if my dad feels this about me, I could do whatever.
I could do it.
Yeah. It's been a real interesting ride, but watching him, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So with all this you just said, I'm hoping that you have some type of a self-care routine. I see some candles back there.
I know, right? Nice floral arrangement. I saw the candle burning.
Right. I'm like, you're out here being strong and representing women and just killing it. So what are you doing for LaTonya? How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, so I don't know. I came across this crazy experience. These full body massages that they do at the massage therapist. Like, I just was like, wait, where has this been my entire life? This is amazing. So now once a month, I do make sure that is scheduled, booked, and I go do that for 80 minutes. I make sure it happens. It just is like a total recalibration mode for me. So I spend that entire day, that it's usually a Sunday, where I do that. I'm an Italian person. I love Italian food. So I'm finding like the Italian spot that I'm going to eat at. And once out of the month, that whole day is just dedicated to myself.
I love it.
On a regular though, I'm a runner. So I run. When someone stressed me out, I run twice. Like, I will run in the morning, I will run in the evening. It just de-stresses, and it allows me to kind of recalibrate too, without having to, completely detach, but at least about a 30-minute run. I'll go and I'll run, and then I come back and I'm pretty ready and prepared. And I love to cook. So I've been doing way more of that since I have been quarantined and not going anywhere, but I love to cook. So I am doing like some interesting dishes. Like, I am absolutely loving that whole mode too. And yesterday I made I'm probably going to say it wrong, but barramundi fish on a yellow rice with salsa fresca on top. I mean, I really was like,
salsa fresca.
I'm the next chef, like Chef LaTonya in the house.
Yes. I love it.
So you have your whole Thanksgiving planned out. Are you planning to do some cooking for Thanksgiving?
Oh man, yeah, I'm gonna do some cooking because I'm quarantined. I have two kids, a little boy and a little girl. Well, she ain't little no more. She's 14, and she just feel like she run my house. But they told me what their menu thoughts are, and they said, "Hey, Mom, make these things." So I am gonna cook, but very light. They said they do not want a turkey, so I'm not even going there this year.
Good.
They just want a ham. And they want like dressing and stuff. So I'm going to cook, but it seems like it's going to be a lighter meal.
I'm on that light menu.
I'm on that light too.
It's only a couple of us too. So
yeah. Same
trying to be responsible, right? And I have everybody and their mama over here. So it's just going to be my mama and my daddy and the kids. Cool. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, do you have any kind of, one of the questions we usually ask is like, kind of, what is your favorite book or something like that? But like, are there any resources that you would recommend to others? Podcasts, books, webinars, I don't know, something like that people would to get started, just as they're thinking, maybe I want to get into technology or I want to get into leadership.
Yeah, definitely. So the book I'm reading right now, I don't know if it's my favorite book, but it's pretty funny to me because it's just named hilarious. And I think everyone deals with this type of person, but it's called The Asshole Survival Guide.
Ooh, oh, wow.
No, it's by Robert Sutton. And it talks about really how you deal with assholes, right? And it spells it out. It starts to tell you about some of those emails that are sent where it has like the asshole underneath it, right? Yeah. So that one's been helpful. I've been just enjoying it as a leisure read. It came across from my Cornell program. It's actually one of the books they told us that we should read. And I've been just enjoying it because it's hilarious. So that one I think would be good, for people that are dealing with difficult individuals. And then one of my favorite books from an executive type leadership type book is a book called Executive Presence by Sylvia Ann Hewitt. I really like it because it not only tells you how to show up, but it gives you data to back the things that are being said. And I'm really a data person. Don't just tell me something that's your opinion. Back it by something so that I can really, you know, really absorb it and be a highly intellectual person when I start talking about what's inside of it, as opposed to people just getting an opinion of what I'm saying. So I really like that book. There's another one, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. I tell every like teenage girl to read that, right? Or one that is entering the workforce like for the first time. I think it's just a great resource. I still pull it out sometimes when I'm like in the middle of some type of situation, or maybe I'm mentoring someone and I want to give them some solid advice. I still pull it out and kind of, you know, use it as like a dictionary because it's a really good one too. In terms of technology, how to get involved, I would just say scrape the internet. A lot of things are just readily available there. There's lots of different avenues to get into tech. I'm an infrastructure girl, so I would say anything around computer architecture, things like that. I've been in the public cloud, private cloud space for the past 8 years as well. But on the infrastructure side, anything around those are all Amazon, you know, Google, Azure, cloud, what they're doing. Lots of available resources out there that are free. You don't really have to go pay for them. So I would just say start there and just look up top like industry technologies, and that'll get you going, at least to understand or figure out what it is you really want to start learning or digging into a little more.
Awesome.
All right. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Oh man, so I'm really big on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there, and I'm typically responding to any messages that come through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn at Latonya Smith. I am behind. So if anybody's like saying to right now, like, no, she isn't, I really, I really do respond. I'm just behind. There's too many coming in, but I do literally sit down on Sundays, sometimes Saturday evenings, and go through and start, you know, answering questions that are coming into me, asking me how to get into, you know, the company that I'm at and things like that. All of that, I do respond. So that's the best way to catch me.
Awesome. We are so glad you were able to join us.
Yes. And I'm going to connect with you. Yes. All that Black girl magic you're sprinkling.
Exactly. All right. We thank you. And we will be sharing this episode on LinkedIn as well as our YouTube channel. So if you are listening to this, please go ahead and subscribe and keep up, and we'll make sure we get people linked up to Latonya on and add more messages to her LinkedIn.
Yeah, right.
All right. You have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Latonya, for your time.
Thank you.